All right, we're here. Sunday night. Man, already. Well, I have to confess something. Some of you who might be watching, might be tuning in. I had something planned for tonight, which you probably saw earlier in the week, and that was about how effort is more important than outcome, right? So I pushed that off to next week because there was somebody that I'm just now really getting to know, and he has been an inspiration for me. And you've probably heard all these stories before, by the way, of people who are inspiring to us for different reasons. This person is inspiring to me for probably the number one reason he has been inspiring to me is his perseverance. And that's what we want to talk about tonight. As you know, whenever I interview somebody, it's going to go a little deeper, and so I'm not just bringing anybody on to chat. I'm not going to do that to you on a Sunday evening at 6. You could be somewhere else. So I want to bring you something that you're actually going to really enjoy, something that you can relate to, something that you're going to take with you. So I promise you're going to have a takeaway today. So my name is Carlos Martinez. If you're tuning in, this is Motivated Minds, my channel, and I bring on motivated minds. And this person I'm bringing on right now is a motivated mind, and he's had a lot of impact, and I think he's had an impact probably on more people than he knows. And so tonight we are going to talk about his journey. Listen closely. Like I always tell you, whenever I do these streams every Sunday, get out your journal. Write some things down that are going to stick out to you. Take away some things from this talk, from this interview, that you can actually put into play, right? I mean, this week you can put some practical, you can establish some practical steps. Even tonight you can create some of those things by listening to how someone else is doing it. Okay? So let's do this. Yes. So who do I have on with me tonight? It's Lewis, and many of you know him by his name, Mr. Camera Junkie. It's the first time I ever heard you, Lewis, is Mr. Camera Junkie, and everybody's talking about Mr. Camera Junkie, man. And I'm like, who is this guy? Who is Mr. Camera Junkie? This guy, he's smooth. He's kind of, I don't know, man. We were talking about a minute ago. You had a great playlist, and again, I must have taken that subconsciously because I have some of the music that you listen to. But I'm like, I want to talk to this guy. I want to get to know this guy a little bit more. And here we are. We're here. We're in the room, man. And this is, by the way, a day after you had a really awesome interview where you interviewed somebody yesterday. And you know what the thing was? Is that was about a little bit more about him, and that was the infamous Doc Rock you connected with last night. Today, I think it's going to be a little hard for you. I think. You know why? Because I don't think you like to... I think you love to talk about other people more than you like to talk about yourself, Lewis. I'm just saying, man, you're so humble, and you love to talk about other people, and you love to serve other people. Tonight, it's my job to make you a little uncomfortable, to focus on you, because this is a special night. This is a special night. I need to shut up right now so I can let you talk. Why is this such a special time for you? What's the big thing that's happening with you? What's the milestone right now that we're celebrating?
Well, yeah, as of last night, we were celebrating my 100th public live stream, meaning there's at least 100 hours and then some, because some of my live streams carried over to 2 and 3 hours. So at least 100 hours of Mr. Camera Junkie live streaming content on my channel, and it being the 100th public live stream, I wanted to mark the occasion.
Yeah. And it was great, man. You did it. I mean, I didn't expect anything less. You did a great job last night.
Thank you.
So, we were having such a good conversation before we started tonight too. And I think you said it like, let's save let's save it for the show, because there was some really good stuff that we were connecting with. But if we could start, if you wouldn't mind, share with us a little bit about who you are, if you could.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, my name is Luis Vega. I'm also known as Mr. Camera Junkie on all social media webs. Um, a little bit about myself: I am a single father to a special needs child. He is my reason for why I do what I do. On top of that, I am a photographer, videographer, video editor, content creator, and as of late, more a consultant to other creators on the platform and sharing my information and expanding my love for this platform and particular into live streaming.
Hmm. So there's a lot. That's a lot. I mean, you nailed that. I mean, I think you've probably shared that quite a bit, dude, because you got that down. So there's, I mean, the thing that stuck out to me, I don't know how many, few weeks ago, maybe, Louis,
Okay.
you shared something on another stream you were doing with somebody else that we know, India Delgado.
Yes.
And I was having fun with it because, when I tune in sometimes to some of these streams, I am connecting with some of the, whenever someone like you opens up a little bit and you allow us to go behind the scenes a little bit, that's what really, perks my ears. And to everybody tonight who might be listening, who is maybe part of my crew, maybe a little bit more of that. I bring a lot of the therapy, side of things into some of my streams. I want you to know that, you're tuning into something that you're going to have something to take away with you. Louis is going to talk about some things today that you're going to be able to relate to. You're going to be able to connect with. Otherwise, I wouldn't have him. I wouldn't have had him on tonight. So I'm confident in that everybody's going to have a takeaway. We can all relate if we're listening enough. So put on your listening, hat and let's connect with what Louis has to share. So 100, okay,
Yeah.
come on, man. I mean, that's a serious deal. I mean,
Hmm.
you've had to persevere, which is the topic for tonight through your journey. I want this to be transformative because I think what you've done is amazing. I mean, because of what you just said, you've been up against a lot to get here. It hasn't been easy. And Louis, I know just a little bit. I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot more, but I just know a little bit. And that little bit that I know is what really stands out to me. Like, how did you do it? How did you get here? So could you share with us a little bit and I think a lot of people are going to connect with us again, is what are some of the biggest things that you've had to go through? Like when you made this commitment, did you just get up one morning and say, I'm going to shoot for 100?
Not at all. Not at all. And that's the whole thing, right? My story
Mm,
goes back to kind of the end of 2020, beginning of 2021,
okay.
more around the November. I
Mm,
mentioned this a little bit in my conversation with Doc Rock last night,
mm-hmm.
but it was Tom Buck, another content creator, an amazing,
Yes.
amazing individual,
Yeah.
someone that I am privileged to call my friend,
Mm,
had his 40,000 subscriber live stream.
mm,
So that was a milestone that he was celebrating.
mm,
And me being subscribed in front of my computer working, his live stream popped up. So I'm in the chat where at that moment, I hadn't realized that I absolutely loved live streaming, right? Even though
mm,
I was already creating content on the platform,
mm-hmm.
I was doing it more of like pre recorded. But whenever a live stream would pop up,
Mm-hmm.
I was in the chat.
Ah,
And I
yeah.
still think it leads back to like my old nostalgic days of AOL chat rooms, and conversing with people when we were
Right.
first able to,
Sure.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was in that live stream where Tom just singled me out real quick and was
Mm,
like, "Hey, Mr. Camera Junkie, thanks for stopping by,"
mm,
and said to the world, so to speak, check out his channel. He's
yeah.
in Peter Gregg's live streams Friday night, very knowledgeable. Go give him, go check him out.
Yes.
And nothing really happened on my channel side of like a flood of subscribers.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But what it did was it showed me that I was already in the space that I was trying to
Mm.
achieve. I was
Yeah.
already on the stage that I
Mm-hmm.
was trying to get to, and
Right.
I was
Right.
just staged right and didn't realize it. And
Yeah.
Tom
Yeah.
just pointing me out was the thing that allowed me to realize, and also sparked the fact that there was the direct communication through the live stream.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, at that moment, I was already, like I said, Peter Gregg's live stream.
Mm.
I was already in
Mm-hmm.
Nick Niman's live stream every Saturday morning.
Mm.
And as I'm learning more about the platform
Mm.
in these live stream, it hadn't hit me that the live streaming aspect was something that I was
Okay.
really passionate
Right.
about
Right.
until that November time. And once that was an epiphany for me, there was no hesitation on me taking the steps
Yeah.
to get started. So
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like you mentioned earlier that you already had a DSLR camera when you decided to start
Mm-hmm.
going and you had certain things, when I
Mm-hmm.
realized as a photographer that I had already what I needed to start live streaming,
Mm-hmm.
the only thing left to do was to do it. And
Mm.
that's when I started going live just shortly after that, like interaction with Tom. And on December 1st, 2020 was when I did like my first live stream. And then just a couple of days later, through my newfound epiphany, was when I was able to join into a live stream for Doc Rock, where he once again singled me out, took a look at my channel, and then invited me to his Let's Get Live community, which at that time they were doing a Vlogmas challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And I took it upon myself that how I was already pretty well familiar with the pre-recorded content, and the live streaming was what I wanted to work on more. I said, "Can I join the challenge but doing live streams every night?"
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, "Sure, just come into the group."
Mm-hmm.
And that started a 30-day challenge. And at the end of the 30 days is when I realized that I'm all in on the
Mm.
live streaming, and
Mm-hmm.
I chose the easiest day that it was for me throughout all the challenges to be able to be consistent with my live streams, which ended up being at first midnight on Saturday night,
Yeah.
because I knew
Yeah.
that that's when the world was partying, so to speak, and I
Right.
wasn't going to
Right.
be in those mixes. So I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
that's the time where I won't be bothered. Kind of, my neighbors will be sleeping,
Yep.
so
Yep.
audio would probably be the best.
Yeah.
And that started my weekly live streams,
Mm.
and I just haven't seen a reason to stop since. So though it was 100 yesterday, it was
Yeah.
also my 71st week
71st
consecutively.
and consecutive week. And if you every little bit, I don't know if anybody can hear it, but there's a little every once in a while you're going to hear something in the background. What are we hearing?
You're hearing my reason why. As I started to mention, I am a father of a special needs boy. That's the basic classification, but I classify him as my miracle man because he
Mm.
was born 4 months premature. He
Wow.
was not even 2 pounds and was
Mm.
given less than 25% chance of survival
Wow.
within the first 24 hours. And that was before his first medical procedure that
Mm.
ensued the next day.
Wow.
So it was challenges and complications from the get go. And
Mm.
he's the roller coaster that flipped my world inside out and has taught me a lot about life in his short 6 years. So what you're hearing is my miracle man, Aiden Alexander Vega. He's still here. He's still kicking and thriving and enjoying every aspect of life. And my motivation is to make him smile every day. And
Yep.
if I've done that, then I've accomplished my goal.
There's a lot of purpose. And by the way, if you ever see me,
A lot of
I'm
motivation too.
yeah, a lot of motivation. By the way, when I'm looking down, I'm taking notes because I want to make sure and not miss some of the things that you're saying.
No worries, no
and
worries.
and so wow, Louis, I mean that's your purpose, man. And that
Yeah.
idea of,
So
I wonder if anybody can relate to the roller coaster maybe that turned your life, in a different
to give
direction,
you to
right?
give you a little
Yeah,
idea of what my schedule
yeah,
was looking like when that happened, as you hear him play with his toys.
yeah,
Um, when he was born,
yeah.
he spent the first 6 months in the neonatal intensive care unit.
Wow. Sick?
At
Did you
that
say sick? How
moment,
long?
6 months.
Wow.
His first 6 months was in the
Wow.
NICU at the Joe
Mm,
DiMaggio here in Hollywood, Florida.
okay.
Um, to to explain this, the NICU is where you have like the highest priority infant patients
Mm-hmm.
that come for need of anything. The system that they have there is incredible, but to visit my son on a daily, I would have to go in and I would have to remove all jewelry, everything. I would have to wash up to my elbows. I would have to like glove up and do all of these things, like almost like a little mini prep surgery, so to speak,
Mm,
every morning to be able to go see my son at the NICU. A lot of times, if there was a new patient being admitted, because it's the hospital, they would close down the entire NICU. And even though I did all of those procedures, I would not have access to see my boy. And then I would have to leave and go to work and visit him when I would finish work. At that time, I was doing phone repairs at a brick and mortar location where I was
mm-hmm.
spending 10 hours a day doing phone repair. And it
Wow.
was
Wow.
8, 8 o'clock, no, 10 o'clock in the morning to
Yeah.
8 o'clock at night.
Mm,
So my schedule ended up being on a regular day where I would see my son.
mm,
I would wake up around 6 in the morning to start
mm.
prepping myself to head out to the hospital to go see him.
Wow.
Once I would finish that, I would leave the hospital around 9 o'clock so that I could make it to the office by 10 to open up.
Mm,
Then I would have lunch and my meals there because I couldn't waste time and I would just work the 10 hours straight
mm-hmm.
and close shop at 8 o'clock to go right back to the hospital to go meet up with my then wife,
Mm-hmm.
um, and see Aiden again for the remainder of the evening. You get there like around 10 o'clock, have a meal there, leave 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, and go home, get 4 hours of sleep, and do it all over again.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So that's serious. Um, that's
That was his first six
perseverance.
months.
Yeah. I mean, for 6 months, man. And I thought the reason I emphasized that, I asked you again because I thought it was like, wait, no, 6 weeks, not 6 months. And you're like, no, six
No, six
months.
months
That's
from
incredible.
December to
Wow.
May.
Okay. So there's a lot. So this is just, when I think of people who, listen, I haven't experienced something like that before. I can't relate to that experience. What I am connecting with though is, you know, um, this need to step up your game. It's like you had a serious. I mean, the consequences were huge, right? I mean, the cost was huge. You had to step up.
Yeah,
You
it's
know.
like the sailors know all hands on deck.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
there's no time for like there's so many things, and that's one of the things that I could also reference to that he's taught me is like
Mm,
how to handle the things that are on your plate.
mm,
Because when it comes to we're talking a motivated mind,
yeah.
the way to stay motivated is to categorize. Some people call it compartmentalize, but I would like to say categorize the situations and know that even though there's something potentially coming next
Mm-hmm.
week,
Mm-hmm.
that's next week.
Right.
And
Right.
you cannot let that freeze you from doing what you need to do
Yeah.
today,
Yeah.
which is well, he's taught me like it doesn't matter what I might have on my plate.
Mm-hmm.
He's my number one priority. So everything in my life takes a back burner to when he needs me.
Yeah. And so everything then, revolves around him and his needs, right? Because that's
Hmm.
the kind of hyper vigilant support that he needed during that time, right? That's everything.
Yeah,
It's so interesting when you say, I want to let me connect really quick, Lewis, with some of the people that we've had come in as
absolutely.
well, because I want to make sure that we connect with some of these. By the way, if you don't know, sometimes my wife pokes her head in here, and I love it, and that's
That's
her
awesome.
right there. So she's not totally sick of me, but that's
Hi.
her. That's her in her kimono. She's a tea ceremony expert, and of course, this person. we know Peter's
An
saying tea.
amazing
Anyone? I know the best tea maker. Yeah, and tea. Peter's funny because what does he do every Friday night? He just guzzles that water, doesn't he? He just guzzles that water, and he makes.
person.
Does anybody make waters as tasty as Peter Gregg? I just don't think so. I just don't
I
think so.
don't know, but he's got a little ASMR aspect to
He
his water
does. That's
drinking
true.
on
That's
Fridays,
so true, isn't it?
You hear the ice cubes clanking as he's
Yeah.
jiggling the cup.
It's totally true. Thumbs up for an awesome man. Well, here's one of your biggest fans, obviously. Lewis is totally awesome, a wonderful, kind, loving man, incredible dad, an amazing son. And you guys, I know that you guys have connected, a little bit too. And then I love it because Stressed Out, Stress Free is here again. He makes it here. Hey, man, you've been here every week. So thank you. And I'm hoping you're going to be able to connect with something that we're sharing about today. And look who's here. Look who's here. It's Sly. Sly's in the
Sly.
house. These are some
Oh,
of our
that's awesome.
friends. I'm so glad you're here, Sly. That's so cool. Kelly is in the house as well. And here's an interesting thing. This guy, I love Kelly. Kelly, if you have any because he's a deep thinker, this guy too, man. I know Kelly well, and he has some really deep thoughts that he does a lot of personal examination. So Kelly, if you have anything tonight, that would be awesome. And of course, my man Kevin is here as well. And Kevin,
Man,
I think he went out. I
absolutely.
think he
One of
stepped
my
out for a minute.
moderators.
There you go. He's one of your mods, and I think he stepped out for a minute. Grab something. So I'm glad you're back. Glad you're back, Kevin. And then of course, come on. Obs is here, and she's amazing. Come on. You
Yes,
know.
I'm gonna be speaking with Aubrey tomorrow, so
Are
I'm
you?
excited to have a
Okay.
conversation. Yeah.
Oh, so are you gonna have Aubrey on you? Are you gonna do a live stream with her, or are you gonna just be talking to
No,
her?
no, we're just gonna have like a
Be
quick
connecting.
call. I'm gonna be helping her out with some Final Cut Pro stuff,
Cool.
so I'm
Cool.
excited to have the opportunity to talk with her tomorrow.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Well, hey, in talking about stories, right? I mean, there's a story, and I've heard some of her stuff that she has shared on her channel. It's been amazing.
She
So,
is amazing.
right? I mean, overcoming. Last week on my stream, I talked about we need this 3-to-1 ratio. It's what the science behind the brain shows. Is we need a lot more uptake of positive than we do negative. And I'm wondering with you, Lewis, as you've gone through this, you've had a lot. Obviously, what you're sharing right now is either you're going to go, the area of depression, anxiety. A lot of parents aren't able to do what you've done. I've worked with a lot of parents who haven't been able to do what you've done firsthand. I've seen it, and it's sad because
It
it's
is.
it's it's, it's heartbreaking because the child is doesn't it is the one who's coming up short, right? The child is the one who's being, um, you know,
Absolutely.
they're getting the short
They're
end
the
of the
ones
stick here,
deprived.
right? Because the parent or parents unfortunately aren't able to get through their stuff to meet the needs of their child. They're not able to get over the anxiety. They're not able to get over the hopelessness. They're not able to get over the helplessness. They're not able to get over the fear of the future, the anxiety of the future. Sometimes they can't get over the shame of this must have happened for a reason, whatever it is that they're going through. And and so I know there was a lot for you. What has been for you, Lewis, maybe the most challenging thing or some of those challenging things you've had to push through, to suit up and show up for Aiden?
Oh, that's tough to put in
Mm.
to one thing
Mhm.
because since he arrived, for me, and it could be different for everyone else,
Mhm.
but for me, it's felt like one huge, long roller coaster.
Wow.
So
Wow.
it's not
Yeah.
one thing that I can
Yeah.
say. one thing has done,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
there was a point where, and I think that that's what I would say was my lowest point.
Mm. Okay.
And I think that that would be a good way of putting it. I guess
Yeah.
my lowest point throughout all of this, my hardest struggle, was the fact when my wife at that time gave me the divorce papers. At that moment, the situation was where she took the entire situation, or the entire brunt of the roller coaster that we were experiencing together, towards the negative side. And I wish there was a nicer way of saying it, but
Wow.
it's just speaking the truth.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Mm.
instead of taking on the challenge together, it almost felt like now I was also another burden to her in
Mm.
her own personal roller coaster. So
Yeah.
even though I was trying my hardest and the things that I wanted weren't coming about. So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, we were planning for a baby shower when my little guy decided to crash the party.
Oh
And
wow.
then, I'm over here trying for a happily ever after.
Mm.
And my wife says, I no longer want to be a part of this. And
Wow.
decides to, at that time, had left the household. And I was alone with Aiden for 6 months prior to me being served.
Mm.
And I get a knock at the door,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm getting served divorce papers, and
Wow.
I'm over here thinking that I was still trying to hold out for the betterment of her mental status, of her mental health, to see if there was like the light at the end of the tunnel.
Mm.
And that was big the big information, or the big thing to let me know that it wasn't going to happen for me. That no
Mm-hmm.
matter how much I wanted it and was trying to be there for it, I wasn't going to get the happily ever after that I wanted. And that was just another lesson that I needed to learn,
Mm-hmm.
including, which I break it down to this.
Yeah.
We could plan for things, right? We could
Yeah.
want things. Like I
Yeah.
was planning for a baby shower when Aiden crashed the
Mm.
party, and I was planning for my happily ever after when I was served divorce papers.
Wow. Yeah.
And you're planning for things, but they don't always work out, because life,
Mm.
the one consistent thing is life, is that it's going to change,
Yeah.
and it's going to,
Yeah.
it's going to give you that right hook, and you need to learn
Right.
how to roll with the punches. So
Oh.
that, I
Yeah.
think, was my biggest learning, or my biggest, or my lowest point, right?
Okay.
And that it was the fight or flight moment for me,
Mm.
where it was like, either you can let this define you and crumble, or you can take it upon yourself to rise above it. And
So
that's where.
let me stop you right there because I want to show you this. And I told you I wouldn't show you this till we got on the
Okay.
stream, but I want everybody to look at this because this is kind of what we're getting at right here. Success is no accident, right? It is hard work, perseverance, learning, studying, sacrifice, and most of all, love of what you're doing or learning to do. And this guy, many of you may remember if you're old enough, this is Pele,
Wow, that's an awesome quote from Pele.
isn't it? And you say his name
Yeah.
so well, so well. But yes, that's the man. And listen, when I was a little kid, I remember him. And all I can remember is when he came to America, in the last part of his career, I mean, America went nuts. And I'm like, who is
Hmm.
this guy? This guy's like, he's like a god. But isn't that amazing, Lewis?
Yeah.
It's no accident. So what you've accomplished, it isn't an accident. It's because of the hard work. It's because of the perseverance. It's the learning. It's the studying, and
Hmm.
it's the sacrifice. And I think you have loved to parent your child. I mean, that's the obvious here is that you've been successful. And the first part of success that I want to point out here is the most important success, and that is the legacy that you are leaving behind, right? That you are passing on to your child. I mean, it's amazing. When I think of children, I just think of they're defenseless. They don't choose to come into this world. They don't choose to come into this family. They don't choose to come into these circumstances. They are. And so to come into this world with any kind of deficiency, you're already, no matter what, you are fully dependent on your primary caregivers. And it doesn't make sense to their little brains when their primary caregivers aren't able to step up, aren't able to suit up when they cry, with whatever needs come up for them, when they're hurting, when they're sad, whatever it is. Their little brains are expecting their parents to show up whenever they need something. And that's the thing, though. A lot of parents, I would say every parent actually, isn't expecting, sometimes the curveball, right? That is thrown at them. But it really does take a special kind of person to be able to overcome all of that stuff that you're talking about. And unfortunately, you maybe had a partner who wasn't able to overcome, but Aiden needed somebody to overcome. Your biggest success story, and I'm sure you already know this, but your biggest success story is your fatherhood. It's your dad. It's you being a dad to Aiden. It's you being everything that he needs. And it's so funny. It's so right. Yes, exactly. I'm sure like every parent, you're not always at 100. There are times where you're not. But here's the thing. You
couldn't have said that any better, because the thing of not being at 100 is the biggest thing for me. Like I've been mentioning this more and more as of late, but it's like, when you're with your significant other, and if you have a parenting duty, like let's say the baby's crying and you need to change the diapers, and you're like, hey, can you get this one for me, because I'm just like so out of it. I don't have that. And whenever this guy needs me, no matter how tired I am, no matter how much I want to roll over and just bump that person and be like, can you get this one for me? That's one thing that I don't have. And that's when I snap into action right away, because I realize that if I don't have that, then he doesn't have that if I don't show up. And that's what, there's no hesitation right there. It's just like
That's
3, 2, 1, out of bed and get to what needs to get gotten.
That's totally it. Yeah. And, here's a colleague of mine. And by the way, Gu Hat, she's been on my podcast recently. She's jumping in with us a little bit more. She says, true life is always changing. We need to be flexible. So true. And some of us aren't flexible enough. Some of us aren't, I don't want to say able to, because we're all able to. Again, look at the recovering addict. How do they go from being a hardcore addict to living in radical freedom for the rest of their life? It's because there's flexibility in their brain. They have enough flexibility. It's that perseverance thing that we talked about, because that's what it took. A recovering addict, it's not by accident that they got sober. It took hard work. It took perseverance, learning, studying, sacrifice. And it had to take love of life, love of what they did, of what they're learning to do. I have very rarely met people who are more present in their life than people who've overcome radical things like you, Lewis. And so, my wife is stepping in. You're seeing the problem with life is daily. Yeah, it's like it's day by day, right? It's so true. Yep. And here's somebody here's an authority, by the way, on this. I would say, Aubrey is an authority on this. You're right. Life does not always go as planned. It just doesn't.
The one consistent thing in life is change.
Yes. That's so true, isn't it? Kevin, I'm glad you like that too. I'm hoping you can. That's such a great quote from Pele. It is. It's and another thing Kevin says, the way you respond to your situations is amazing, Lewis. And that's why I throw in you can't be 100, because here's the thing. a lot of us, we talk in these realms that some of these groups that you and I are a part of, Lewis, and there's a lot of encouragement, man, and support, and coaching. Right, Doc is a great coach. There are other people in our groups that are amazing coaches. And sometimes I've got to be a little careful, to be honest with you, because I work with people, a lot of people, and couples that where coaching isn't what they need right now. What they need right now is some deeper work, so that then the coaching would actually be effective. Because if I'm trying to tell somebody or encourage somebody to go from point A to point B, but something is blowing up in their life and they're totally out of control, then it's going to be futile, right? It's not going to work. And so,
It's gonna fall on deaf ears.
yeah, it totally is. I mean, they may go for a moment, but it's just not going to last. And so when we overcome, it takes something incredible. I once knew a couple, a guy, when I was 7 years old. I remember this man and his wife. And his wife was so precious to me. She really made me feel special. I don't know, something about her that made me feel special. And then she came down with a neurological disease, and eventually, from 7 to 10 years old, I saw her crumble. I saw her fall into a state of where she was basically, immobile. I mean, she couldn't move anything. She couldn't use anything. And her husband, it's the most amazing story. I wish this could have been documented, actually, because she was in that state where he had to care for her, everything, because she literally had no use of anything. He cared for her for the next 40 years. He didn't.
Wow.
He didn't leave her. He stayed with her. He cared, and I watched him. The way that he would, I met him when I was a little kid at my church, and he showed up every week with her, Lewis. Every week he showed up with her in the wheelchair and cared for her. And you'd see at times where he'd have to, you would see the messiness of him caring for her sometimes right there in that pew, and I was just blown away. And she finally passed a few years ago, and the second half of his life, basically, it started.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just thinking, these kinds of minds that are able to overcome such adversity, they're amazing stories. And I know that's why people are kind of probably connecting with the inspiration of your journey. You said something earlier. What were some of the things, Lewis, that you maybe would have been tempted to dwell on that you didn't, that you chose not to dwell on? What were some of those things?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Well, the easy way to say is like all of it, like I had mentioned, because it all felt like this one roller coaster, which I still feel like I'm on. Like I haven't really gotten off of it, and I'm still twisting and turning because we don't know what's coming around the next corner. But if it's one thing that it's tough, but I would have to say would be the accumulation of the family members that I lost in the consecutive years, because after Aiden was born, that was one roller coaster, and then divorce and selling of the house was another. And we sold the house on Tuesday. Well, let me give you an even better example,
Okay.
because that's how the ebbs and flows go. Monday, my niece had her first child, and it was like up here.
Oh, yeah, a high mountaintop
And then
moment.
Tuesday, my mom passes. And then Wednesday, we finalize the sale of my house. But at the same time, it like puts into fruition the separation of me and my wife, because from there was when everything started.
Wow.
And that was just Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of that week. Even to the point where last year I was at the People of Video conference
Mm.
where I was very fortunate to meet Doc Rock and a lot of other content
Mm.
creators.
Yeah.
Uh, the last day of that conference on Sunday at 6 a.m. was when I received notice that my brother had passed.
Mm. Wow.
And as you can
Wow.
see on my face right now,
Yeah.
the accumulation of
Mm.
4 years prior, I lost my sister.
Mm.
The year after that, I lost my grandmother, my mother's mother.
Mm.
The year after that, my mother passed. And then just last year, my brother passed.
Wow.
That it was like, I would say that could have been the straw that broke the camel's back of
Mm.
just saying,
Yeah.
when am I going to get a break from a
Oh,
funeral?
come on. Yeah. Yeah.
But at the same time, it's also the fuel that I use to say, I'm just not going to end up that way.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
like I mentioned to you, it's no disrespect to my family,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just, it also taught me to give people flowers while they're still around,
Mm.
to
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge people and let them know how much they mean to you
Yeah.
when you have them in front of you.
Yeah.
Because at that moment, right, it might seem awkward to say, hey, you know what? I appreciate you. I love you for everything that you do
Mm-hmm.
and that everything that you've meant to me,
Mm.
just to me,
Mm-hmm.
than to have to say it to a group of people at a eulogy about the person that you so cared for or desired to.
Wow.
Where
Yeah.
once again, I feel falls into the same category as we were just talking about, that that message would be falling onto deaf ears.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because even though those people are there to see the person who passed,
Yeah.
the words would never impact those people the way that it would have impacted the individual
Mm-hmm.
that is no longer with us.
Right. Right. Yeah. Lewis, I just want to say thank you for being comfortable enough to be vulnerable this way. That's
I'm
there's
an open book.
yeah, yeah. Well, a lot of people I wouldn't be able to go there. So I mean, this is just but this is life, right? I mean, there's a harsh reality to life that I think sometimes we want to minimize or we want to rationalize or normalize. You know, I'm okay. Everything's okay. Everything's okay. It's like, no, it's not. It's like, this is crazy. I mean, it's what you've gone through, the degree of loss that you've experienced is, it's totally, it's crippling. And I'm
It could be
curious.
if you let it.
I'm curious if there's a connection because of this incredible gift and responsibility that you have with Aiden.
It is.
Yeah, yeah.
Like Doc Rock
Mm.
has been mentioning it in his live streams lately. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
your excuse is valid.
Yeah.
Now what? Meaning, I have the excuse, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think, I hope most people will take away from this. That
Mm.
you're looking at a person right here that I have a very valid excuse. I can pull out the pity pass, right? And
Mm.
say, "Hey guys, look at this laundry list of
Totally.
negative or bad things that happened to
That's right.
me, and let's empathize and give me the pity."
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
But that's
Right.
not what I want to be known for.
Mm-hmm.
And for that reason, my excuse is valid to go into a corner and cry it out and be there for a week to try to
Mm.
just let it all out.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then the responsibility that I do have, which is my little guy,
Yeah.
what how could I be the best that I can be for him
Mm-hmm.
if I do allow myself to crumble and
Right.
be in the corner
Right.
because my excuse is valid and
Yep.
I decided to cash in that ticket?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. that is so powerful, right? How let me give you let me share this really quick. If some of you have ever seen this before, I know that if there's any of my people on here, you've probably seen this. But there's an experiment that was done years ago. We don't do it anymore because we realized it was kind of borderline. But there was an experiment done, and you can find this on YouTube, by the way. Just type up still-faced experiment. And this is an experiment of, where a clinical psychologist at the time had a mother sit with their 1-year-old, and their 1-year-old was sitting right in front of in a baby chair, and the mother was sitting right in front of him. And the psychiatrist said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to turn around. So you're going to turn around like this, and then I want you to turn back around. And when you turn back around to look at him, I want you to have zero expression. I want you to be a still face, okay? And let's see what happens. So what happens is when she does that, she immediately has zero expression, and her little baby, 1-year-old, which we know today that little babies at that age are very, very already very, very social already. They're aware of so much. He starts to point to things that he expects her to follow. And he points, but she doesn't follow. She just keeps looking at him with no expression. And of course, you start seeing, what's going on? You see that little brain starting to work, like, wait a minute, what are you doing? And then he starts to point and continues to point, and then he starts to make noise with his hands, and everything he does, she doesn't respond. And there's a point to this, Louis, from connecting with what you just said. And so, and then of course he gets to the point where he's like, where are you? That's what's happening in his brain. And he screams with that super high pitched scream to get her attention. And she doesn't react. And right after that, he starts going all squirrely. He starts losing, control of his body and starts crying. And immediately the clinical psychologist says, okay, stop, re-engage, synchronize with him. And that little baby, it took him seconds to re-engage like nothing ever happened. He's now laughing with her because she's like, what are you doing? What are you looking at? And it's immediately. And he re-engages with her, and his world becomes stable once again. The earthquake is gone. This is a picture. I want everybody to think about this. This is a picture. A lot of parents, my parents, they were still faced with me. Okay. They weren't able to get past their stuff. They weren't able to engage with me enough. They weren't able to meet my emotional needs enough. They were still faced. It wasn't like that exactly, but you know what I mean. It's like they were, though. They when I needed them the most, in those critical early years, they weren't able to suit up and show up as much as I needed. And I got squirrely and I cried, and I know that, not enough of those needs were met. And so it's interesting that when I think of Aiden and I think of what you're doing with him, it's like you could easily go still-faced. And here's the thing. When that psychologist describes what's happening in that little brain, this is what was so powerful is your Aiden and babies can handle some still-faced once in a while. They're designed to be able to handle that. They're designed to be able to absorb that and move through that, and it not be negatively and them not negatively affected, to be negatively affected. Mm-hmm. It's when a parent does it consistently enough, that's when the negative impact happens. I had a family that basically, or my mother, my dad, they were below the line enough, meaning they didn't meet my needs enough throughout my whole childhood. And because it was so consistent of those unmet needs, there was a negative impact. So a parent doesn't need to be 100. They're not designed to be 100. It's just, can they be consistent enough? Can they show up enough? Yeah, enough. And then have those days where they're okay crashing and burning. Yes, I'm gonna have that day or those days where I'm done. I'm out and I need help and I need support, and I'm crying and this isn't the way it was supposed to happen. And then I'm able to come back. I'm able to come back and reconnect again. The baby can handle that. We're designed to be able to handle that, and I just am so moved by the way that what you're describing is really, what it is you see in that video. You could easily do that consistently. Does that make sense, Lewis? Kind of?
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, like once you started explaining, the still face and that how the parents could be that way,
Yeah.
I totally understood what you're saying
Yeah.
because it's easy for me to do that as well, but I am also very conscious
Yeah.
of Aiden's needs.
Right.
I'm
Right.
also fortunate that I feel like I had mentioned before, if I'm
Mm.
able to get a smile out of Aiden
Mm.
because he does not talk, having to do exactly with a medical condition
Mm-hmm.
of a medical procedure that he had done. But we're hopeful, but just never sure because of some nerve issues with his vocal cord if he will ever get to speak. But at the same
Yeah.
time, he's
Yeah.
still able to express himself
Mm.
clearly.
Okay.
And that's what I mean.
Okay.
Like we have all seen the parents where you
Yeah.
have the clingy child
Mm.
who needs everything from
Mm-hmm.
their parents, even though they can do it themselves.
Right. Right.
I think I'm very fortunate enough
Yeah.
to have this situation where my son needs me
Yeah.
very, very much
Yeah.
for everything that he
Yeah.
does, and yet he's not as clingy
Okay.
because I try
Yeah.
to still normalize
Mm.
our situation
Yeah.
and allowing me to have a conversation with you while he entertains himself with
Yeah.
his toys
Mm.
and knowing that dad's within like voice distance,
Mm-hmm.
which
Mm-hmm.
allows him to know that
Yeah.
everything's okay.
That's right. That's you're nailing it. That's the thing that little child. Well, here we're talking about your 100, but we're not. We're talking about Aiden right now, man. This always comes back to Aiden, doesn't
We're talking, we're talking,
it? It always
we're
comes back.
talking about consistency.
Yes.
And if one
Yeah.
thing to bring it all
Yeah.
together is that Aiden
Mm.
and having, right?
Yeah.
Having like no choice and having to be
Yeah.
consistent for Aiden
Mm.
is what has taught me and has allowed me to be
Yeah.
consistent for
Yeah.
my camera junkies and my
Yes.
camera junkie crew on Saturday nights because they're
Yeah.
also a big part of who I am. And
Mm.
I guess my saving grace
Mm-hmm.
because throughout all of my roller coasters, right? The one thing that I can also rely on
Mm-hmm.
is the amount of fun that I'm going to have on Saturday night's live stream.
Yeah. Yeah. You get a
So
lot
no
out of that.
matter what the week can bring,
Yeah.
at least I know that I'm going to show up
Yeah.
and my crew's going to show up for me
Yeah.
and we're going to hang out
Yep. Right there,
for the
man.
great quote and we're going to have the hang out and
Love of what you're doing. Yes. Uh-huh.
and that's why I'm always so grateful for my crew.
Yeah. Well, I've been a part of that. I've joined your crew, and I can't get out of your crew now. It's like I'm there, man. And Aubrey, yes, tell people how you feel about them. You know, I have to connect more with her because I know that a lot of adversity. I know that she's connected a lot and done a lot of personal work. If especially in the stuff that she shares in her morning streams. She also says that's one of the biggest things I learned through her experience. There you go. Yeah, totally. Kevin, being vulnerable is not easy in the slightest bit. Thank you for being open and allowing us to learn from your experience. Man, I second that, and it is not easy. Yeah, I agree. It isn't. Aubrey, yep, absolutely. Yeah, it is wild. I think that was a response to that thing I was sharing. That guy is an incredible inspiration to me. When the child comes to expect that all the time, it's powerful. I mean, it really is our earliest formation. There's a miracle, by the way. I mean, there's something that happens in our brain that is kind of crazy when we're born. And we've got about 5 more minutes before we finish up. But I want to share this. The degree of joy that we experience in our brains as infants is ridiculous. And through research, we have found that there's only one other person or group of people that experience that kind of joy synapse experience that we are when we're an infant. Remember, if you're at the supermarket and you're looking at a child looking at you, and he's sitting there in that little, in that little seat right there, and you make eye contact with him because he's looking to make eye contact, and he makes eye contact with you, and if you smile, you'll get the biggest smile from this little kid because
Always.
he's trying to synchronize his joy state with you. And if you don't, it'll make him uncomfortable because he's expecting you to synchronize in his joy. And that's why they're just so full of joy early on. We're so connected with joy. And what we see is when that goes away, we don't experience that again. But you don't want to know one demographic that does as adults. It's the Down syndrome demographic. There was an experiment done not too long ago where they created this retreat, and the retreat was hosted. They put all of these people with Down syndrome into as servers and helpers and all of that. They had them doing all the work. And what they found was incredible. It was mind-boggling, actually, because they have zero of this. They don't have comfort space. Like, they're in your face and they want to touch you and they want to be happy with you and they just want to be affectionate with you. All of these things that make us all screwed up, that we lose so early on, they had it. And so there would be a person sitting in a chair at this retreat, and this server, one of these young people would come up and they would get close to him, and they might touch their face, and the supervision that was there was saying, how is that for you? And the person's like, it's uncomfortable for me because I'm not used to this, but I like it. I don't know why I like it. This affection, it makes me feel joy. And that's what we experience as infants. That synchronization is so powerful and important for parents to understand when they have babies, is that you have to be almost hyper vigilant to meet them in their joy state. And what we have found through research is that as they grow, if we meet them enough in their joy state, they're going to be much more regulated as they get older. And what a gift to give to a child, right, is to help them be more regulated when they face the hard world, the harsh world, the difficult things in life, And so right there, Aiden is right there. We hear him playing. We hear him. You're suiting up and showing for him, showing up for him. The greatest gift that a parent could ever give to a child is the gift of being present.
And he's with me all the time, wake up and go to sleep. And I'm very fortunate that I have this time with him as well. The amount of joy that boy's smile has brought to my life alone is immeasurable.
Wow.
That's all I can tell you. And there are certain things when it comes to parenting that I don't know if I will ever get to experience, right? I don't know if I will ever get to hear my son say, "Dad, I love you." And knowing that's something that's tough for me.
Yeah.
But I also understand that that's a selfish thing for me to ask, because in his life is not necessary.
Mm-hmm.
The way that he expresses to me is with a smile on his face.
Mm-hmm.
To know that, like you just said, I was able to match his joy.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to be there present when he wakes up first thing in the morning, and that I am able to get him to smile before his eyes see the light of day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that is what means the most to me, because he cannot tell me, "Dad, I love you. Dad, thanks for this or thanks for that." But he can show me with that beautiful little smile that warms up my heart every single day.
Yeah. That's powerful, Lewis. Really powerful. Wow. Thank you for sharing this with us tonight. And I'm hoping that, your story of the way that you're overcoming, right? I'm careful not to use the word that I learned anything, because I'm in process. And if I've learned how to be patient, that means I'm patient all the time, and I'm not. If I've learned how to be compassionate, that means I'm perfected compassionate. I'm not all the time. And so just hearing you share just reminds me of, that we can overcome, the adversity. That and also is so key. It's like, I have this incredible gift that I need to suit up and show up for. And also there are times where I'm going to crash and burn. They're both true. And you mentioned a while ago about compartmentalizing. There is healthy compartmentalization. Thank God our brains are created to compartmentalize. How else?
Absolutely.
How
All
else do
hands
we?
on deck.
Oh, it's awesome. And then there's the unhealthy compartmentalization when we do really bad things and we don't think about the people that we're hurting. That's a whole other deal.
Or we put things off when we compartmentalize, that we put them to a back burner so that we don't ever have to address them, which is
Yep.
the negative side of the same aspect.
So you're right, and that's something. We didn't get as much into that, but there is a procrastination, avoidance, aspect of this that could have completely derailed you. When we're going through heavy stuff, how are we born? We're born wanting to live life with the most amount of pleasure and the least amount of pain. That's how we naturally want to go through life. And so when pain comes up, we naturally go to avoidance. And procrastination, what we see behind procrastination is usually there's a fear behind it of something like fear of failure or something like that. And it's so easy to go there when this thing in front of me just seems too big. It just seems too big. And there are so many things that lined up for you, Louis, that has helped you overcome. You have found what I call an outer circle behavior. An outer circle behavior is our nurturing behaviors that make you come alive, behaviors that feed you. And obviously your Saturday nights are one of those things as well. Aiden's obviously your biggest, probably outer circle enjoyment that you have in your life. And also, though, you've been able to connect with. We didn't talk at all really about your vocation, basically, because you're not called Mr. Camera Junkie for nothing. But we just wanted to hear tonight, I think, from how you have attained the 70, how you've attained the 100, public live streams, when you have so much working against that from happening. And for people who are listening, you have so much, right? We have so much that's working against us. We really do. And we need to fill out that other column, though, of the things that are working for us. There's so much. And Louis, you have something huge that's working for you, and that's Aiden. And I love how you said you said this a few times, that you've learned so much from him.
I've learned so much. I keep learning from this guy.
Yeah. And that's what, really, Louis, that's what healthy parenting should do. If parents aren't learning from their kids, it means it usually means they're not present enough with their kids.
Yeah, they might just be a little bit too still-faced.
Yeah, exactly. Totally, man. So, Louis, thanks for sharing tonight with us.
Thank you for having me. This was an amazing conversation, and I really want to thank you because, like I was mentioning before about giving people the flowers when they're around, I'm going to have to do the same for you, sir, because you have told me that I was an inspiration to you and to the fact of doing what we're doing right now and being live and being present.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people, right, who can tell you, like, you were an inspiration to them, which I can tell you is great. It gets the endorphins
that
going.
Affirmation is powerful. Yeah.
But one thing that I've noticed, and it was something that I learned through my photography, which I'll bring it up, right? That as a photographer, I was always told that my photos were great and that I did a great job. But after I would deliver them, it got to a point where I realized that no matter how many times I was told I was being good,
Mm-hmm.
it really mattered on how they utilized the photos after I delivered them.
Mm.
So someone telling me these are the best photos that I've ever had is great. But when somebody showed me that these were the best photos that they've ever had, because after I delivered them, you see that they actively changed all of their social media profiles to one of the photos that you delivered to them. And
Mm.
now
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
constantly applying
Yeah.
your work to represent them in
Yeah.
their best light.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between somebody telling you that
Mm.
you're an inspiration and somebody showing you that they're
Mm.
an inspiration.
Wow.
And even though
Wow.
there's a lot of people who
Mm.
have told me that I'm an inspiration,
Mm.
you putting in this work here and
Mm.
you actually going out and doing it shows me the inspiration that you
Mm.
say that I've given you. So
Wow.
for
Wow.
that, I have to tell you, sir, that is an inspiration all on its own, and it's reciprocal, because to see what you're doing here
Mm.
is amazing, and I could only be humbled by
Mm.
saying that I was an inspiration to what you're starting here and
Mm-hmm.
what's to come in the future.
Wow, Lewis, thank you, bud. That's I receive that. I fully receive that, and I'm forcing myself to, because I'm one who has a hard time receiving that kind of affirmation. But I take that, and I really do receive it. And thank you for it. It's
So thank you.
and that's powerful too. Just because the showing it is, it's we can do more of that. We can do more of that.
Yeah,
Kevin says,
like I said,
he says, I feel this is so
mhm.
true with relationships with new people online, or I'll meet them where they all are, and that relationship will only go stronger. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
the worst thing. Kevin's so great. I don't like to share with fixers, analyzers, and advisors. They're not safe. One time in a group, Lewis, every time somebody in a group might say to me, in a therapy group, they might say, I just want to let everybody, at some point they'll say, actually I jumped in here because I kind of wanted some advice, and I'm not so comfortable that there's no feedback in this group. And I really feel like I'm sharing, but I want somebody. And I said, and I'll say to that person, everybody who feels like they want to shove their advice down this person's throat, raise their hand. Everybody raises their hand because everybody wants to give the advice because it's so easy. Nobody wants to focus on their own stuff. They want to give this person advice, and I'm saying, and I look at him and I'll say, see, that's why we don't do crosstalk in this group particularly, because, everybody's going to want to
Exactly.
force feed you, what to do. And you're going to get a million different kinds of, people trying to fix you, trying to analyze and advise you. And fixers aren't the safest people. What I want is what Kevin said, this is so true. I got to put this up again, is meet people where they're at, be aware of where they're at, and by the way, Sly is saying you are an amazing young man with such a gentle soul. Absolutely. People, flock to you because you're such a positive person with all the hurdles you've had to jump over, right? You keep smiling, and
You got to.
you have to.
You have to keep
Right?
smiling.
Yep.
It's like you said a little while ago, when you see the little boy in the shopping cart
Yep.
in the grocery store and he's
Yeah.
looking at you, you can go still faced,
Yeah.
right? Because you're worried about everything that you have on your plate.
That's right.
But at that one moment, all you
Yeah.
have to do is just smile back, right?
Mm.
And now you've built something wonderful in that child.
Yeah.
And all it took was for you to just not worry about your stuff for like 2 seconds,
Mm-hmm.
which is probably a good thing for you as well,
Yeah.
because to worry about things that are ethereal,
Yeah.
hypothetical, that could be coming but
Yep.
are not certain is never a good look.
That's right. That's right. It's a couple more here before we finish up. It's what's so sad with what I see on a daily basis as a preschool teacher. Wow, Kevin, I didn't know that. We spend more time with these children and their parents. Yeah, you do, right? It's Man, you have such a huge responsibility. So, shout out to you, Kevin. That's a huge responsibility.
Kevin's awesome.
Oh, man. Aubrey, give flowers. Yes, give flowers. Totally. We have we've had a really special talk with you tonight. A little different, and I love the kind of, support we get in this live stream, because we get to hear a little bit. We get to hear a little bit from some of even some of your junkies. We get to hear from them a little bit, some of that deeper understanding and connection, and what they relate to. So thank you all for showing up tonight, everybody in the chat, and asking your questions. Or putting your comments in. That's awesome. I want to remind everybody before we finish up, there is, I do want to say right there, subscribe, like, comment on this, because I want more people to hear what we just did with Lewis. This is not the only content creator with a soul. Okay. It's like, I know we don't hear a lot from the backstory. We don't hear a lot of what's going on beyond the scenery, because we're talking a lot about technology. We're talking, a lot of these guys like Lewis, that's what they talk about. That's their life. That's what they do. And so I just feel like it's a privilege and really an honor to be able to hear a little bit of what's going on, a lot of what's going on behind the scenes, and what has gone on beyond the scenery with you, Lewis. So thank you again for being here tonight. Thanks for showing up and allowing me to do this with you, man. I really appreciate it.
It was my pleasure. And once again, thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun. So if you ever want to do it again, you got my information. Just reach out.
Yes. I was hoping, that's the only thing I was hoping to hear tonight, actually. I was hoping you would put that out there. Instead of me asking, I was hoping you were going to say, let's do this again sometime. So I love that. Lewis, thank you, buddy. And everybody out there, thanks for being here tonight. Next week for Psycho Ed Sunday, for Psychoeducational Sundays, I am going to be talking about how effort is more important than outcome. And this is the reason right here. I'm so glad we did this week, because I'm going to actually go back to some of the stuff that Lewis said, because his effort was key. He didn't focus on the outcome. That would have gotten him depressed. There's no way. It would have been paralyzed. Instead, it was like day by day, suit up, show up, day by day. And so we're going to talk about that next week. Okay. So everybody, thanks for being here. Lewis, thanks again, man.
It was my pleasure. Everyone have a great night.